Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about using decision points in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition to make your game better. So this is essentially a dungeon mastering tip, and I use this as a core structure of my games. In fact, it's really what I build my entire games around, is each session giving the player characters 2 or 3 major decision points. And decision points are really critical within Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games because here's what they do. One, they communicate to your players that they are the center of the game. They communicate to each player, your player character has fundamental critical power in this world, right? And that's a big deal because we really came out of the 80s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s of tabletop role-playing games. And in those decades, there were a lot of dirt farmer games. And dirt farmer games are literally tabletop role-playing games that were like, oh, you know, the world is filled with these super cool superhero-type people, but you're just a dirt farmer. You know, don't forget your place. And now, you know, today's modern tabletop role-playing games, and especially Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, we are really equipping players to have player characters that are incredibly powerful. And I kind of see it as, you know, almost like there's a lot of threads going on in your game. But those threads all wrap around the player characters. And where they wind and the direction they take, the center is always the player character. And decision points communicate to your players your decisions matter, okay? There are no false. So there's some old Dungeons Master tricks where you say, oh, do you want to go, you know, right or left? And, you know, and it really doesn't matter. You're going to give them the same outcome either way, right? So that's an old trick, you know, and it's starting to fall away now because of things like player agency. So Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition was really built on the back of Dungeon World, some of the indie games out there. And so these decision points are really critical. The other thing that decision points do is they allow you as the game master to truly not know what's going to happen in your games. This is a very big deal. You're playing to find out what happens, and that's a fundamental difference from the 80s and the 90s. Decision points, they reassure the player of power. They reassure them that they actually have agency in the game. And they really highlight them as fulcrums on which, you know, the whole world hinges. And that's cool. That's what players want to do. That's what we can give them. And that's what we should. And so that's why I use decision points in my Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games. So with that said, let me give 5 examples of types of decision points that you can put into each session. Okay, so I'm going to break out a little bit of a memory palace issue to do this. So Burn Rider meets Stable Sav Orc. Okay, all right. So let's talk about the first one, Burn. So I'm going to talk about a burning tavern. All right. So you have your player characters. So you have a band of adventurers. Okay, and that band of adventurers come across a dead tiefling, okay? And that tiefling turns out to have, you know, a rogue's kit, you know, a thieves kit on them, and they also have correspondence, right? So the players come across this person, he's filled with arrows, this tiefling, and so they rifle through all the gear, they get, you know, some magic item, they get a minor magic item, and they get, you know, the tiefling's gold pieces, and then they start reading through the correspondence, right? And it says in the correspondence, I want you to remove, you know, it's from this tiefling's master, remove all of the weapons that we have hidden in the basement of the Jade Dove Tavern, because 3 nights from now, the Jade Dove Tavern will be burned to the ground by rogue who we have contracted from this Thieves Guild to burn it to the ground. So get all those weapons that we have stored in the basement out and move them, okay? But also don't give anybody a clue that that's why they're being moved, okay? Now, basically at this point, the players are dealing with a disaster timer decision point. Okay, they know that the Jade Dove, where they've enjoyed the mutton, and where where there's a the barkeep is a good guy, that they've arm wrestled, and that they know the people there, right? They know the chef who has the seasoned mutton, right? Do they go about their current quest, or do they break right now and ride a day and a half to give the people of the tavern the information that's needed to stop that tavern from being burned to the ground? Okay, so the players have a decision point, right? And that's a disaster timer decision point. All right, the White Rider. Okay, all right, same group of player characters, adventuring party. They are out and about. They're going about their way, and they're riding on a good, solid path through a forest. Okay, this path has been cut. Most of the riders are using it because you can travel more quickly on this path where there are no, all the trees have been cleared. This path through the forest. They come across they actually come across an Aasimar all dressed in white, and it's a white rider on a white horse. And the Aasimar, pulls to a halt and says, "Ho, adventurers, how be thee?" And at that point, the adventuring party, they have a nice exchange. The Aasimar explains to them, is going the opposite direction of them on the path, okay? And explains that he has recently cleared out a dungeon 20 miles to the west, and shows them one of the magic items that he has, and wishes them good luck upon their quest, and then the Aasimar moves on. Okay. Well, about 5 miles down the road, they come to a cross point, and at that cross point, there's a whole group of 4 human riders who ride up, and they're going to they meet them at the crossroads. So the player characters meet, the adventuring party player characters meet this non-player character party of pursuers, 4 humans on black horses, right? And they say, "Hey, we are pursuing an Aasimar on a dressed on a white horse, all dressed in white as well. Have you seen this person?" Right? And then those player characters now have other non-player characters. They have their fate in their hand, okay? And that is general knowledge that they have that the other non-player characters are lacking. So if they tell them, "Oh yes, we saw him. They came from the direction we just came from," telling those pursuers the truth, well, then that Aasimar's got a world of trouble on his way, right? But if they say, "Oh no, we haven't seen him," then that Aasimar's fate is in the hands of fate, because those those non-player characters, they could go in any of the 4 directions, and the blood of that Aasimar is no longer on the hands of those player characters. They neither saved that person nor damned that NPC, right? But if they say, "Yes, we did see him. He went this way," and they point to the opposite direction that the Aasimar was going, they are giving that Aasimar more time, right? So that is a general knowledge decision point, right? And so the player characters are, and then you have to, and basically as a game master, you might love that, that white-clad Aasimar. It's one of your favorite NPCs. But if they give up the right direction, that dude's going to die. You have to let their decision stand, right, as much as possible, right? Or, maybe they'll come across that person maybe 6 or 7 sessions later, right? Or they'll just get information at a later time that Aasimar, is alive and well, because they did not tell those pursuers the direction. All right, so we've done the Burn Rider. Now we have to talk about the stable Sav Orc. Okay. Decisions. Let's talk about the Orc, okay? The players come into a village, right? And the villagers greet them as adventurers. Many times, small villages, they really get excited when adventurers come, because adventurers have, cool spells, and they have magic items, like when your player characters come into a village, they should be treated like rock stars, they have, they have gold pieces, which, villagers rarely see. They have, super cool magic items. They have awesome armor, cool horses, all that stuff, right? So basically, your player characters are coming to a village. They're given, food for the evening, and all the villagers come out and say, "Regale us with the tales of your quests," And so at that point, the night is going along, and then the villagers, say, "Okay, well, we need to put watch because there's this there's this band of orcs that have been in the hills for a few months now, and we're really worried. Used to be only about 50 orcs, but now there's like 200 of them, right? The village only has 80 people in it, right?" They say, "So we've been keeping a watch, so we have to put a watch up." And they say, would one of you be willing to help keep watch for the night? And so player characters say, "Yes, we're going to do that," right? So at that point, in the middle of the night, the band of orcs is going to come down from the mountains. They're going to attack that village, okay? Now, the way that I do this is a decision point, right? One, they know there's 200 orcs coming, right? All the player characters have is just one meal that's been supplied to them by these villagers. Now, are they going to be heroes and save this village? Or, with 200 orcs on the way, are they going to die with this village? Right? That's a really good decision point, right? And the way I work that is, I say, okay, here's how we're going to do this. We're not going to do a combat with 200 orcs, right? We're going to do, each one of you guys are going to, since there's 200 orcs, every single one of you is going to be attacked by 8 separate orcs, right? And that's as many as I can fit around your square, right? I'm going to surround you with 8 separate orcs for 2 rounds, right? So each of you will be absorbing 16 individual attacks, whether they be melee or ranged, right? And whether you live and each one of you, what you do, every single villager is watching. And your success or your failure will be magnified, multiplied by the villagers, okay? And so basically you could say, hey, for each orc that you put down, a villager puts down 2 orcs, right? Or 3, or a factor of 4. You have to do the math to figure out exactly how many, right? And then for each wound that you take, and for each of the 8 orcs that are attacking you that you do not slay, those orcs are going to kill this many of the villagers. So the entire fate of that village rides solely on the combat expertise and the fortune, and as well as the dice fortunes of those player characters. That's a decision point, right? Okay, all right. Let's talk about the salve. Okay, all right. Player characters ride into a village, and actually, I'm sorry. They're approaching a village, and they come across a woodcutter, right? And one of the player characters is badly wounded, okay? And let's say that the cleric is not there that week, and that means that the player character of the cleric has ridden off. Whenever I have a player character who's out for that week, I immediately send their player character somewhere else to deal with something. So let's say your group of player characters does not have a cleric, which is kind of a cool opportunity. It's kind of nice, and one of them is badly injured, and they need healing, right? So they come across this woodcutter, and the woodcutter goes, "Oh, hey, it's great. He says, absolutely. Let me ride you to the let me ride you out to to our cleric that's in town, right?" So he said, and then the guy, the woodcutter really talks up the cleric in town. He says, "Oh yeah, this cleric's great. Everybody loves him, and everybody goes to him for healing, and everybody gives him, some gold, and he has a great god. It really serves the town really well." And then the player characters are passing a hut on the outskirts of the town. And they could see the town wall at this point. But they see this little hovel, and there's this old woman. And she is outside, and she's struggling to fix like a fence around her little hovel, right? And she just looks dejected, and her home looks horrible. And so at that point, the player characters say, hey, who's that woman over there? And he goes, and the guy goes, oh, that's Esmeralda. She's the hedge witch. You know what? So here's the thing. She tries to heal people, and she actually gives some help, some help in healing to some people in the village. But the reality is, a while ago, one of the people that she helped actually died. And her, what she does is really unusual. Nobody understands it. She uses all these weird salves. She doesn't just pray to a god and then you're healed. It's really strange. She's a hedge witch, right? Now, don't worry about her. Her healing is somebody died under her protection, right? So you should definitely not use Esmeralda, the hedge witch, for any of your healing. Now, right this way, I'm taking you to the great cleric of our town, right? Right there. That's a decision point, okay? If it is the player characters having the ability to gift power to a non-player character, right? Now, they can go to the cleric, and the cleric is going to give them all the healing they need. Everything's going to work out great. It's going to be a reasonable price. There's not going to be any risk, right? But if they say no, stop right here, and they jump in and they walk away from the and then they just walk away from the person who is and then they just walk away from the woodcutter, and they say, Esmeralda, my name is XYZ. I'm an adventurer, and I need your aid. Please heal me, right? Then at that point, that is a decision point. They're going, if she can actually help them, then she will be given power because these powerful adventurers have chosen her as healers. And the woodcutter's going to tell that story, right? And then the way I would deal with that is I would actually roll, because she is experimenting. She's essentially a hedge witch. And she's experimenting, with what she's going to do and how she's going to deal with it. And so they may be healed and they may not be healed, right? So you want to make it exciting for the characters. But they are deciding her fate, right? And they are either denying her power or a restoration of her power, or they're giving it to her, right? And that's exciting. So that's a decision point, right? The last one is the secret. The secret is it's the most powerful decision point there is in the game because it's so easy, okay? A player character overhears something. They get secret knowledge. Whenever anybody has knowledge that other people lack, it's really critical because what it does is it makes it so that they can really decide what happens. So the player characters, one of the player characters, they go to a really good tavern. One of them gets stark raving drunk the night before, and you have that player character wake up in, and it's like still dark outside. It's like 5 in the morning. They're groggy, so they start to shift around in the stable, and they realize they're in the stables. They're literally in a pile of hay, covered by hay. They don't even know why, right? But at that point, this tavern is on the border of two kingdoms, right? And it's actually in Blue Kingdom's area, right? And so everybody thinks that, this tavern is within the Blue Kingdom, right? But at that point, a traveler comes over and speaks with the stable hand. And the stable hand says, yes, all is in place. My service to the Red King continues. I have made these notes. Please take these notes to the Red King. Make sure that the court receives them. And thank you for visiting me. Give my best to all that serve in the Red Kingdom. Right? Now they know that the stable hand is actually a Red King spy. Right? And they can decide whether to kill that person immediately, inform the tavern person, and then the tavern owner now has a secret, and they could play him almost like a double agent. They could wait for him and trap him, or see who else is actually corresponding with them, but it's a secret, right? So you have so all these are powerful decision points that you can do, right, and that you can use for your player characters. You have the secret, you have the combat multiplier, you have the general knowledge one, right? You have the power gift, and let me see what I did here. I did the Burning Rider. And then you have the disaster timer. So you have all 5 of those key points that you can make decision points for your player characters to make your game great and to always be highlighting each one of your player characters and make them the center of your game. Make them the absolute rock stars of their world and the absolute rock stars of your game, of their game. And if you do this and you're successful with it, you're going to have players who are happy, you're going to have players who are returning, you're going to have players who want more. And I think that's the key to the game. So have a great Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game, and remember the power of decision points. Take care.